Hello everyone, and I'm Autobot Sonic, a Telltale Gamer, bringing latest everything Telltale games, Transformers, and more. Welcome back to another Transformers review, where today we are going to be looking at Transformers EarthSpark Season 1, Episode 21, What Dwells Within. So, ever since this episode summary was first leaked months ago, last year, I have been wanting so badly to look forward to this one, and after having seen it in the rest of the Season 1 of EarthSpark, I can easily say this is tied with, Security Protocols as my favorite episode of EarthSpark. It is just incredible, as someone who's a huge Starscream fan, to see how he weaves into the story of EarthSpark and how he impacts the lives of the Terrans. It's so cool, also just giving a brand new take on Starscream that we've rarely seen before in a Transformers franchise, let alone a cartoon at that. So if you're excited as I am to talk about what makes this probably the best episode of EarthSpark besides Security Protocols in my opinion, be sure to like, comment, and of course subscribe. Let's go ahead and jump right into it. Episode 21 starts off with a prison break, our second prison break in this ghost base after the last one was caused by hashtag halfway through episode 11, hashtag oops. This time we see Starscream, Novastorm, Skywarp, Soundwave, and Swindle all making a run to escape out of the ghost base after somehow they got out. It's left very ambiguous as to how Starscream and the rest of the Decepticons escaped, which for some reason Hardtop isn't here, which you think the whole reason Swindle was out here was looking for Hardtop, and you think after he got arrested by Optimus at the start of episode 20, you'd think he would be wanting to escape with Hardtop as well, but maybe he got separated from them at some point before the episode started or something. But I digress. Anyway, you might be wondering, how did this happen? Were they able to actually break out of their ghost cells? And Swindle sort of alludes to this when he's talking to Starscream as they're running. He tells Starscream that this wasn't the plan and that they should have just waited for someone else. And before he could say who he's talking about, he just says, we should have waited for, but then Starscream cuts him off. So you might be wondering, what is Swindle talking about? Who is this person that Swindle says he should have waited for? Is it Hardtop, Skullcruncher, one of the Insecticons, Ravage? You might think it's Ravage because of the fact that episode 8 ended with that big cliffhanger of Soundwave releasing them out of the force field to try and find a way out, and we got a little teaser of Starscream. But in my mind, I think this is actually Shockwave, and then you might be wondering, but Sonic, how could it be Shockwave? We saw back in episode 16 that he got frozen by Megatron with the Immobilizer. Well, I thought that too, until literally just earlier today, we got storyboards for a deleted scene in Transformers EarthSpark. And these storyboards come once again from the lovely Stephanie Wrestler, who has been doing an amazing job on storyboards throughout this entire season of EarthSpark, with her doing artwork for episode 6, 13, 16, 21, 23, and the rest of the last 5 episodes of EarthSpark. But with this one, we're going to be looking at a deleted scene that she had done the storyboards for episode 16. I'm only going to show little bits of this storyboard, or just talk over my own voice. But in these storyboards, we see that this was going to be a scene that takes place during throughout the middle half of, or throughout the middle, I should say, of episode 16. In this, we actually got to see why Soundwave released Ravage back in episode 8, and that was because he was on orders from Starscream to do so, to try and find an elaborate way to break out of the ghost cell. For context, basically we see Starscream and Soundwave in this deleted scene in their ghost cells, where Starscream talks to Soundwave about how every year on this day, Megatron always goes out to the Space Bridge Memorial Park to basically reminisce on the war and just honor his fallen comrades that he lost during the war, which is what gives further context actually as to why he brought all the Terrans there this time in episode 16. What we don't get in the final episode, but what we do get in this deleted scene, is a lot of context about what happened with Ravage and all that. So, Starscream talked to Soundwave about how he plans to basically ruin the day for Megatron here, while also helping them escape from Ghost in this. And Soundwave's curious as to how he's going to do this, and Starscream says that Ravage is the key to it, as we see clips of what seems to be Ravage sneaking around Ghost's base, grabbing some sort of giant remote control, like a Cybertron remote control. And as we see them go through a bunch of ghost cameras trying to dodge them all, and having a little fun with some of the ghost guards as well. I absolutely love Stephanie Wrestler's storyboards here on portraying Ravage as this very playful cassette tape. We see when the alarms actually go off because Ravage does get caught. Starscream mentions this.
They spotted Ravage. She's usually so careful with the cameras.
Yeah, so I was actually wrong all the way back in my review of episode 8. EarthSpark Ravage, for the first time in Transformers history, is actually female in this time. Very similarly to Frenzy in EarthSpark, who is also female. So, it really sucks that we never get to see more of Ravage throughout this whole EarthSpark. The fact that we only saw her in episode 8, and then she just disappears off the face of the Earth. And I really think 70 Wrestler mentioned on her Twitter and in the description of her YouTube video that this scene was cut for time and that it just made the episode flow better. But I disagree, actually. I feel like this scene was very crucial in revealing what happened to Ravage after Soundwave snuck her out of his cell at the end of episode 8. If they were going to cut this scene with Ravage getting this remote for Soundwave and Starscream, I feel like they should have just cut the scene of Soundwave releasing Ravage altogether, because then it just leaves as an empty cliffhanger that just wasn't resolved at all. But I guess you could argue it did happen off screen. But anyway, in this scene, after Ravage gets discovered by the ghost cameras, she immediately jumps back into Soundwave's cell after he makes a little portal for her, and then he makes another hole in Starscream's cell, which Ravage tosses the remote into Starscream's cell. And so when all the ghost soldiers come in to learn what's going on, Starscream hides the remote, and he and Soundwave just act natural, so they go to check the other cells for what caused the disturbance. This allows Starscream to press a button on a remote, which ends up freeing Shockwave inside the cryogenic chamber under the Space Bridge Memorial Park. So that explains how Shockwave ended up escaping. It wasn't due to some sort of malfunction just after 15 years of nothing. It was actually purposely caused by Starscream. And my guess is that Starscream believed that if he could release Shockwave, he would end up making his way back to Ghost Headquarters to free Soundwave and everyone else. But since clearly we saw Shockwave get taken out by Megatron at the end of the episode, my guess is Starscream noticed this. Maybe that he saw Shockwave being taken in, and he's like, oh, well, we gotta go with a different plan then. So maybe he just had Skywarp and Novastorm blow a hole in their cells for them to escape, and while it wasn't as clean of an escape as it would have been if Shockwave was there, the thing is, the plan is still in work to get everyone out. So, again, I really wish this scene was kept in episode 16, because then it gives more context, but it just leaves Ravage's fate as unknown. But I guess you could argue that it all just happened still just off screen, which is a little bit disappointing, but I'm not going to take points off this episode or episode 16 for it. But I will be making actually a review of the entirety of season 1 after my reviews of each and every individual episode of EarthSpark is done. So I'll be reviewing the entire season as a whole and just drop storylines, stuff like that. So I'll be sure to bring it back up for that review. The Decepticons continue their escape until one of the ghost agents activates a button on the side of the wall, which causes like suddenly a bunch of energy barriers to end up constantly splitting off the Decepticons one by one. And so while Starscream, Novastorm, and Skywarp were able to outrun them with their jet ult modes, Soundwave and Swindle end up being left behind because they're not fast enough. And that really surprised me, because how is Soundwave able to get stuck behind while Starscream and Novastorm and Skywarp aren't? Because in EarthSpark, Soundwave turns into a stealth bomber, which arguably should be at least somewhat as fast as Starscream, Novastorm, and Skywarp are, but instead he just opts to run. I guess you could argue that maybe because because Ravage in this timeline was still out doing something, maybe he didn't want to leave her behind, just wanted to look around for her, or maybe just some other reason. Maybe for some reason Soundwave's bomber alt mode wouldn't have enough room to transform in the ghost hangar. I don't really know the answer to that. But regardless, Soundwave and Swindle left behind, presumably put back in their cells, while Starscream, Novastorm, and Skywarp were able to escape by going into the same tunnels that we saw Swindle exploring back in the last episode with episode 20, Disarmed. So here Starscream explains to Skywarp and Novastorm that the tunnels are very old, even predating the Ghost before they set up their base here. So that begs the question as to what exactly created these tunnels. You could argue that it was Quintus Prime, maybe when he first landed on Earth millions of years ago and put the Emberstone there. Perhaps maybe he had carved out these tunnels with help from like whatever he had created with the Emberstone. But maybe that'll be a mystery that ends up getting solved later on in the series in season 2, who knows. So that ends the cold open of this episode. So now we're going to go ahead and jump over to the main plot of this episode, and that starts off with all the Terrans plus Robbie and Mo heading to try and find the cave that Twitch and Thrash found the cave water in all the way back in episode 7, Friends and Family. They're here because they believe the cave water can be used to try and not only fix Robbie's cybersleeve, but also cure him of an illness that's suddenly started affecting him. As we see here when it cuts over to Robbie, he looks totally exhausted, and even like all the color in his face is starting to drain. He looks extremely tired and lethargic. Even when Mo tries to question Robbie to see if he's okay to keep going forward based on how tired he looks, he tries to reassure Mo and tell her that he's fine. And at the same time, we see Twitch and Thrash even arguing with each other over remembering what the cave water is, because apparently they haven't apparently not gone there since the events of episode 7, which is really weird. You'd think they wouldn't want to wait until they ran out of like energy again to go and get refueled. So how have they been keeping, like, do they just run off any water, or is it just the Pacific cave water? Because I don't know, can they go like months or weeks without recharging? And considering that when Nightshade breaks up a little argument between Twitch and Thrash, when they're arguing about the fact that they can't sense each other's emotions anymore, which I'm happy about that they actually brought up that point from episode 20, Nightshade mentions how they believe that there's no point in fighting if the cave water can really heal Robbie like Twitch and Thrash say it will. That means then that Nightshade, Jawbreaker, and Hashtag never got any cave water, that since they've been born, they haven't refueled once. Anyway, though, as they keep going, we see Hashtag actually ends up stopping for a moment, having a little PTSD episode all of a sudden of when she was taken control of by Mandroid and forced to attack her siblings. I'm not exactly sure what causes this little episode, but I guess it's to set up a little conversation that happens between Hashtag and Starscream later on this episode. But maybe it's because that she sees Robbie really sick from his cyber sleeve illness that's causing it, but I don't know, it's kind of unclear as to why exactly Hashtag is having this episode all of a sudden, but it is cool that she's having it and that she actually seems to be at least a little bit traumatized by that event in home. Eventually, though, the Terrans do end up finding the cave that they discovered back in episode 7, and as they get ready to use the water in the attempt to secure Robbie and fix his cyber sleeve, suddenly all the water gets sucked up by the ground and falls through it, and suddenly all of a sudden the whole floor of the cave ends up becoming this quicksand permeable substance that all the Terrans as well as Robbie and Mo end up getting sucked through. And there's no real explanation as to how all of this happens. We don't know how the cave ends up being turned into quicksand that Hashtag everyone falls through. Though, I guess it's sort of implied that it might be caused by Nova Storm's sonic booms that she was making earlier, because in the scene right before us, we see that as Starscream, Skywarp, and Nova Storm are flying through the tunnels underneath the ghost compound, Nova Storm decides to go ahead and try and show off a bit by doing a bunch of sonic booms under. And I don't know, I'm no scientist, but can sonic booms create or cause solid rock to turn into quicksand, or is this an effect that's caused by something else? I am not sure, but it's a weird thing that it's just a little nitpick that I'm not going to take any points off, though, once again, just because I love everything else about this episode. Anyway, all the Terrans plus Robbie and Mo end up falling through the floor just as Skywarp and Nova Storm are right below them, and so the Terrans end up falling right down in front of them, which causes them to stop and look at all the Terrans, and immediately both parties immediately recognize each other, having last seen them in episode 9 Age of Evolution Part 1. So Skywarp and Nova Storm immediately recognize them, and then Starscream actually comes in to see them all as well. And again, I always talk about this, that I love the music in EarthSpark. I singularly think that that Starscream's theme as he shows up with Skywarp and Nova Storm is probably one of the best musical pieces in the entire EarthSpark. And shout out to Crush Effect, the composers of the EarthSpark OST. You did a fantastic job with Starscream's theme. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to play it in this video, but basically, if you think back to all the other themes that we've heard in EarthSpark, the Terran theme is just this very ethereal synth horn music that feels very it's both technological but also has a bit of natural elements to it, very similar to how the Terrans are in nature. They're both mechanical and organic in a way. With the heroic Autobots like Optimus and Alita, they have a very triumphant synth horn to show how heroic they are. With Bumblebee, he gets sort of his high-speed keyboard and guitar mix to show off how, at least in the very first few episodes Bumblebee showed up in, he was very cocky, sure of himself, very daring, and devil may care attitude and all that. With Megatron, he gets this heavy cyberpunk funk music, basically just to show how much of an imposing character he is. And now with Starscream, he ends up getting this amazing electric guitar riff, but it also has sinister tones to it to show off that as the second in command of Decepticons, he really was a force to be reckoned with, but also show that Starscream has his own flair to him. And with his theme being so, like, stylistic and, like, dramatic, it really helps fill up that, like, it really helps tie into EarthSpark Starscream's character, that he's such a larger-than-life character. He's very dramatic, but he's also such an imposing figure. So I think Crush Effect did a great job with Starscream's theme, and I love how he's introduced. So Starscream actually instantly recognizes Robbie, Moe, and the rest of the Terrans, referring to them as the Maltos, which I suppose would make sense considering Skywarp and Nova Storm had met them earlier, and since they were imprisoned at the end of episode 10, you could argue that Skywarp and Nova Storm told Starscream about them while they were in prison. So Starscream plans to basically hold all the Maltos hostage and basically use them as leverage to try and get further away from Ghost. So all the Terrans immediately run down one of the tunnels, being chased by all the Seekers in an effort to try and escape. It's at this point where they realize that they're quickly approaching this giant closed stone door with very Quintus Prime-like symbols etched into it, and Jawbreaker thinks he's going to have to ram the door open in his Dinobot mode to try and break it open, but just as he and the other Terrans approach it, the door starts glowing green and suddenly opens for them. So somehow the doors in all this underground tunnel seem to be linked to the Terrans, which I guess might make sense considering the fact that if Quintus Prime created these tunnels and therefore the Emberstone was an artifact of his, considering the Terrans were created by the Emberstone, that means they would therefore be compatible with Quintus Prime's tech. So as the Maltos and Terrans are all still running away from the Starscream down these tunnels, they end up finding another door, but this one is blocked off with like red lights glowing out of it. Despite this though, with Starscream and the other Seekers still chasing them, Jawbreaker decides that he's going to go ahead and try to force open the door anyway, so he transforms and pries the door open, but that's when we learn why that door was closed, and that's because it was holding a giant Cybertronian beast known as the Dweller. I haven't watched a lot of G1, but apparently the Dweller is a creature that appeared in a single episode back in Transformers G1, and also made an appearance in Transformers Cyberverse in one, I believe it was in the episode where they went underwater and went with, like, I think his name was Riptide. They met the Dweller there, but the Dweller was a Titan in Cyberverse. But the Dweller apparently in EarthSpark is very similar to its G1 counterpart, in which I believe it's Skywarp or Nova Storm in a later scene in this episode explains that essentially the Dweller was an ancient Cybertronian beast that would feast on the energon of other Cybertronian ships that were passing by over the planet's surface. So it was kind of like a wild animal in space that would just prey on unsuspecting ships that passed to and from Cybertron. So at first, they immediately start running back towards Starscream and the other Seekers to try and outrun the Dweller, but then Thrash immediately gets cornered by them both. So when the Dweller goes up to Thrash, I was like, this scene actually low-key made me laugh a bit. So Thrash is just cowering behind his shield, watching to see what the Dweller does, and then after looking at him for a moment, it then just immediately chomps down on Thrash and eats him whole in just instant. Not even like takes the time to chew him or anything, just swallows him whole. But thankfully, though, this doesn't kill him, as the Dweller immediately spits Thrash out. And as we learn later on in this episode, that's because since Thrash isn't made from Energon, or doesn't run off Energon, the Dweller isn't interested in eating him, as it only wants to consume Energon. After the Dweller spits out Thrash, it then goes to attack Nova Storm, which it does by wrapping all these tentacles around her, which slowly drain the Energon out of her. And Skywarp then runs up to try and pull her out of the Dweller's grasp, begging Starscream for help. But Starscream doesn't even try to help. He just stares at the Dweller, pointing his null ray at it, just looking totally shocked by it. And I don't know if this is some sort of PTSD response Starscream is having, like, not because he originally didn't believe that the Dweller was actually real, or it's because because to try and fit in with other Starscreams before him. Starscream is a very selfish character, someone who only looks after himself first and foremost. So maybe Starscream is just nervous about wanting to try and help Skywarp free Nova Storm because he's worried he'll get himself killed in the process, so better Skywarp and Nova Storm die instead of just risking his own life to save them. But as Starscream just stands there, just totally awestruck, Nightshade, Twitch, and the rest of the Terrans end up having to save Skywarp and Nova Storm instead by cutting off a bunch of the tentacles the Dweller is using to grab them. So they end all up doing a little chase trying to escape the Dweller, which they manage to do so by having Hashtag slam her fist against one of the walls, causing the tunnel doors to basically resonate with her own energy, and therefore causes the door to slam shut behind them, temporarily saving them from the Dweller. So it's at this point then, now that everyone is safe, Skywarp and Nova Storm sort of lash out at Starscream, complaining at him for not even trying to help him. And I absolutely love the conversation here that happens, where Thrash and Twitch talk about how much of a coward and selfish person Starscream is, and how Twitch says that they should go back to being with Megatron because he's a good leader. He would never leave anyone behind. And then Starscream claps back by saying that, oh, you don't know the real Megatron, you don't know what he did and how he left us all to be imprisoned. Steve Blum does such a great job as Starscream this episode, and after having been almost 5 years since we last heard him as Starscream in RID 15 and Prime, it's such a great change to hear Steve Blum back as Starscream again. It's like he never left the role, and I'll try to go ahead and play that clip for you now if I can, because I just love the performance Zeno Robinson, Catherine Kavari, and Steve Blum all give in this scene.
What did you expect? Starscream's as selfish as they come.
Yeah, you should go back to following Megatron. He wouldn't leave anyone behind like that.
Ah, naive child. Is locking Decepticons in prison while he walks free, not leaving us behind? You don't know the real Megatron. The ruthless tyrant who ruled over us with fear and intimidation.
I just love in general how EarthSpark Starscream acts, like how his past trauma with Megatron is discussed in this episode. And while we don't necessarily learn exactly how Megatron abused Starscream in the past prior to the events of EarthSpark, you can tell that if you've been a Starscream fan for years and know like what all other versions of Starscream throughout the years, like IDW Starscream, Prime Starscream, Cyberverse Starscream, how they've all been mistreated by their respective Megatrons, you'll know sort of like kind of get the understanding of what EarthSpark Starscream here is talking about. And I absolutely love that. And of course, this is not to be, we should have expected this from the episode's writer, who is none other than May Katz, who, if you don't remember them, they actually have been writing a lot of Starscream-based content for Transformers over the past few years, previously writing a lot of episodes revolving around Starscream in Transformers Cyberverse, before doing a few in Transformers War for Cybertron Kingdom, and then coming over as a story editor for EarthSpark. So she single-handedly wrote this entire episode, and you can tell because May Katz is a huge Starscream apologist, and I gotta relate to her on that as well. I know my YouTube channel name is Autobot Sonic, but man, I'm not gonna lie when I say Starscream is probably without a doubt my favorite character across the entire Transformers franchise, especially IDW and Prime Starscreams. Before that, IDW and Prime Starscream is probably my favorite, with a more of a lean towards IDW 1 Starscream, but man, EarthSpark Starscream is so good, and I can't wait to talk more about him in a future scene that happens with him in Hashtag. Speaking of Hashtag, we see that she's actually touched in a way of sorts by Starscream's like words to Twitch and Thrash, where after they say that, oh, Megatron would never treat this Skywarp No Storm like Starscream does, and then Starscream says, oh, you don't know Megatron like I do. You see Hashtag, like, something clicks inside her for a moment, that she seems to actually, like, believe Starscream, the fact that perhaps maybe Megatron isn't good as he's made out to be, that while I do think that she believes that Megatron truly is trying to make amends for what he did, it's clear that he did make mistakes in the past when he was leader of the Decepticons, and that's going to be further explored over the course of this episode, which I really, really like. While Starscream is talking to Twitch and Thrash about Megatron, the Dweller actually ends up managing to catch up to all of them. So they all start running in the same direction towards one of the other doors, when Starscream actually all of a sudden ends up bolting off from the other Seekers and Terrans and ends up going off the tunnel on his own, presumably thinking that the Dweller would go and chase after all of them instead of him. However, when Hashtag notices this after all the Terrans get behind another door getting ready to close it, she realizes that the Dweller has changed paths and is actually going after Starscream instead. So while the other Terrans and Seekers are content with leaving Starscream behind, Hashtag doesn't want to do that, so she transforms and actually goes to chase after Starscream to try and save him from the Dweller. And this starts off what I think is the best part of this episode, and that is just Hashtag and Starscream being a duo throughout the remainder of this episode. So Hashtag immediately transforms and starts driving after Starscream, just as if the Dweller ends up grabbing Starscream prepared to eat him. However, before it can do that, Hashtag manages to stun the Dweller by knocking down all of its legs in her ult mode, and then just pulls Starscream free from the Dweller. So they had this really hilarious scene. Hashtag actually ends up carrying Starscream over her shoulder, just the two of them running away, with Hashtag basically using her wheels as roller skates like she had several other times throughout this series so far. And they end up getting away from the Dweller, trapped inside of what appears to be some sort of big map room, thanks to Hashtag closing the door on the Dweller. So after she lets go of Starscream, Starscream realizes that they are in this big map room when Hashtag touches, brushes her hand across these weird, like, bioluminescent red floral plants, and that ends up opening this huge globe inside the room, which seems to be broadcasting coordinates of both Starscream, Hashtag, and the Dweller. So Starscream realizes that this can basically be a whole map of the entire underground tunnel system, and so Starscream plans to have Hashtag use this map to try and help find a way so that they both can escape. And I love this conversation here. So of course, naturally, Hashtag doesn't want to abandon her siblings or Skywarp Storm at all, saying that they don't want, so she doesn't want to leave them behind. I love how Starscream responds by saying, oh, of course you can. They were gonna leave us behind at all. And Hashtag immediately snaps back at Starscream saying that they never do that. And so I just love this scene so much. Stephanie Lemlin and Steve Bloom are amazing as Hashtag and Starscream in this episode. And they just keep going back and forth with Starscream wanting Hashtag to use her ability to control all the doors in the tunnel system to try and help him and her escape, but if Hashtag doesn't want to do without saving the rest of her family as well as Skywarp Storm. And so it gets to a head in this one scene that I'm just going to go ahead and play for you right here.
I need you to do your little door trick and get us out of here.
No, I won't!
You have to, or else I...
Is this how Megatron treated you?
You believe me?
I believe he hurt you.
You don't know me. You couldn't possibly understand what I've been through.
Then tell me. When bad things happen, it isn't always our fault.
That one line, the line where Hashtag basically tells Starscream just in a fit of rage, he says, is this how Megatron treated you? And there's just a very pregnant pause in Starscream's little rant to Hashtag where he's taken aback by it. He's actually taken aback that someone is taking his abuse at the hands of Megatron so seriously. The total shock in Starscream's voice where you literally hear his voice quiver saying like, you believe me? To Hashtag? I loved it. And the way just Hashtag is so calm and understanding to him, saying like, I believe he hurt you. And then Starscream, like, you can hear Starscream actually is a little bit defensive. Like he says, oh, you don't know me. You couldn't possibly understand what I've been through. And the way Hashtag just is so open to it, the way that she wants to understand why Starscream is so untrustworthy. Why is he so concerned with looking after himself? And it's clear through his interactions with Hashtag and all that, that just whatever Megatron did to Starscream, we don't know what he's done to him yet in this continuity compared to other stuff. But if it's anything like he did to him in Prime or the Bayverse or G1, and God forbid if it was like Cyberverse where he beat the ever-loving shit out of him, like, oh my god. I don't blame Starscream for being how he is, how he feels that because of the abuse and torture he suffered at Megatron. And I'm not saying that Starscream isn't without his faults. I'm sure maybe there was some stuff that Starscream did that maybe warranted some sort of punishment from Megatron. But it's clear that in most continuities of Starscream, he's always portrayed more so as just a joke or just a haha, look, Starscream thought he could take over Megatron, but now he's getting punished for it, like G1. Or Cyberverse to a degree, though Cyberverse did actually elaborate on that, basically making Starscream go way off the deep end because of his abuse from Megatron. With EarthSpark Starscream, he's damaged. He is just, and I don't mean like Jared Leto Joker damage, has the big tattoo damaged on his forehead. EarthSpark Starscream is clearly traumatized by whatever Megatron did to him back during the time of the war. And now to have Hashtag actually take his abuse seriously, the fact that clearly Hashtag recognizes that Starscream, the reason why he acts like all this, why he's so defensive, why he's so concerned about himself first and foremost, is because of whatever Megatron did to him. And the fact that someone seems to have finally taken Starscream seriously like that, and even Hashtag opens up to Starscream about that by basically saying how she was taken mind control by Mandroid and how she's still traumatized from that event. The way that Hashtag and Starscream bond over their shared trauma, so to speak, is just so good. And I love how this scene not only shapes Hashtag and shows how empathetic she is, but also just how it changes Starscream's character throughout the remainder of this season. It's such a big moment for EarthSpark Starscream, even though this episode's more so about Hashtag. How I feel about EarthSpark Starscream now is the same way I feel about Breakdown. Literally, Breakdown, Bumblebee, and Starscream are probably my 3 favorite legacy characters in EarthSpark. And I want to see like 3 more episodes of Hashtag and Starscream like trauma bonding or like just going to therapy together or something. I need to see more of them together. Stephanie Lemlin and Steve Bloom did fantastic jobs as both Hashtag and Starscream in this whole episode. And it's just so good. However, this incredible scene can't last forever, as Hashtag realizes that something is coming for them both, as they notice several dots rapidly approaching them, as we see a bunch of like red eyes in one of the tunnels that Starscream presumes is the Dweller. So he has hashtag get behind her. I love how protective now Starscream becomes with hashtag after this moment, that now that hashtag also has just been so willing to listen to Starscream's trauma, the fact that Starscream is so clingy to hashtag now, that it really seems like, for lack of better terms, that Starscream sort of views hashtag as a daughter-like figure. I love their relationship throughout the remainder of this episode. So Starscream orders hashtag to get behind her as they both get ready to fight what they believe to be the Dweller, but they're relieved when they see that it's just Robbie, Mo, the rest of the Terrans, as well as Skywarp and Nova Storm having managed to make their way over to the map room, which Nightshade also realizes at this point. And at this point, Robbie and Mo realize that they can use it to track the Dweller and therefore destroy it before it can cause harm to the rest of Witwicky and other Cybertronians. And though at first Skywarp and Nova Storm seem to want to help them, hashtag actually gives a little nudge to Starscream and tries to get him to convince them to help out instead. And I love that. You can just see the grip that hashtag has on Starscream now, where it's not so much that hashtag is manipulating Starscream here. You can just see that hashtag and Starscream have a much deeper bond and understanding now after their little talk together, that they clearly do respect each other in a degree. So hashtag convinces Starscream to go ahead and talk to Nova Storm and Skywarp and convince them to help out the Maltos with killing the Dweller. So Starscream talks to Skywarp and Nova Storm, basically saying how if they were to let the Dweller free, there's a chance that could come after them again if it ends up killing all the Maltos, so they're better off to just help them kill the Dweller right here and now. So the way they plan to do this is to basically just corner the Dweller in one specific spot. Either, I'm not sure if it's like kill it in a cave-in or just corner it so they all can go ham on it. But regardless, the group splits up into several groups to try and stop the Dweller. Hashtag and Starscream are on one group naturally, the other consisting of Nova Storm, Thrash, and Nightshade, and then the last group consisting of Twitch, Jawbreaker, and Skywarp, while Robbie and Mo stay behind in the map room to sort of track where the Dweller and everyone is going. So it starts off attacking hashtag and Starscream, which hashtag is able to redirect the Dweller by sending it through another set of doors. However, therefore, it's heading to Nova Storm, Thrash, and Nightshade. However, when it gets to them and Thrash goes to try and close his door, for some reason the door is not working. And the same goes for Twitch and Jawbreaker when she tries to close the door by her. For some reason, the doors just don't respond to Twitch and Thrash when they go to try and close the doors. And I'm not sure why, because clearly it worked with Jawbreaker when he ran up to the door and it opened. But maybe, I guess you could argue that maybe hashtag is the only one who really could interact with the doors because she has the inherent Wi-Fi connection. Maybe that Wi-Fi connection extends the Cybertronian technology, like whatever Quintus Prime created with these tunnels. Or maybe because since she interacted first with the map room, that sort of overwrote all the access points that Jawbreaker, Nightshade, Twitch, and Thrash had, so therefore hashtag was the only one now who can interact with it. But it's interesting nonetheless. So it's essentially after Twitch and Jawbreaker fail to close their door, Skywarp freaks out and tries to escape on her own. This ends up with Skywarp ending up getting cornered by this one door, and she ends up laying in this puddle of cave water. And so the Dweller tries to like stab at her with its tentacles, and so when Skywarp teleports out of the way, she ends up actually teleporting in such a way that the Dweller thrusts its tentacles into the cave water, and that causes a weird burning effect. So it seems as though that the Dweller is able to be injured by this cave water, which Skywarp manages to radio back to hashtag and Starscream before suddenly her line goes dead alongside Nova Storm's, where they both end up actually getting eaten by the Dweller, though not dead, as we'll see later on in the episode. So while the Terrans and Maltos are all stuck down in the caves of the Dwellers, we actually see a scene with Optimus and Megatron in a meeting with Agent Croft, basically talking about Starscream, Nova Storm, and Skywarp having broken out of the Ghost base and are currently inside the in the tunnels. Megatron stresses to Croft that they should go after Starscream because he's very dangerous, and Croft though rejects this, saying that because Starscream and the rest of the Seekers are in now uncharted territory in the underground tunnels of Ghost, their best bet is to instead just wait for them to resurface and pick them up with Energon scanners so they can deploy Ghost forces to capture them once they resurface. And I love how Megatron seems to be so stressed about capturing Starscream. And let's listen to this scene here where Megatron talks to Croft about how dangerous Starscream is.
Starscream is too unpredictable and dangerous to be out there. We must assemble a retrieval team, and...
It would be pointless. Starscream and the other Seekers have entered an unmapped cave system.
This is Starscream. We cannot waste another second. hoping he walks into a trap. Not when we could go after him.
It almost seems like to the audience, it makes us feel that Megatron feels like he's in the right for what he did to Starscream. That Starscream is a no-good traitorous Decepticon, that he deserved everything that was coming to him. And I actually really like this in a way that, while we've seen Megatron try to make amends for everything he did as leader of Decepticons, it's interesting how he seems to firmly believe that he was in the right for all the abuse he gave to Starscream, that he was a no-good traitorous Decepticon, and that he was right to do every bad thing they did to him. And the way that he stresses that, oh, Starscream is so dangerous, he could he could do so much damage to people if he gets out of here. I think low-key, you might be thinking, oh, Megatron's just stressing about how dangerous Starscream is because he doesn't want anyone else to get hurt by Starscream. I see it personally as a way that Megatron hasn't totally forgiven Starscream, or just still believes that he's a bad Decepticon and that he deserved everything that was coming to him. And that is really interesting to see, that we have this sort of double-sided story where Starscream believes that Megatron was a good leader at first, but then was super abusive towards him and everyone else in Decepticons, whilst Megatron believes that Starscream is just pure evil and deserved everything that was coming to him. It's just it's so interesting, especially with how Megatron treated Soundwave earlier this season. If you remember back in episode 8, when Megatron was fighting Soundwave and all his cassettes, you can see, like, when Megatron was with Optimus fighting Laserbeak, Ravage, and Frenzy, he didn't want to hurt them. He thought they were just, like, little kids, basically, just playing a prank on Agent Schroeder, and that they weren't any real threat. Same with Soundwave. He didn't want to fight Soundwave, and he only did so when Soundwave called him a traitor and basically just mocked him that he was a horrible leader. So the fact that he's switching on a dime, like, just switching, he's not even, like, giving Starscream a chance to redeem himself. He's like, I don't want to fight you, Soundwave, I don't want to do this, you're cool in my book. But he's like, oh no, Starscream, oh, we gotta kill him, we gotta make sure he doesn't hurt anyone else. I just find that so interesting. But anyway, as we see here, Croft doesn't want to have Megatron or anyone go after Starscream and just wait for him and the rest of the Seekers to resurface, and orders Optimus to get Megatron under control before she has to put him in a jail cell as well. So, however, unbeknownst to Croft, Optimus actually encourages Megatron to go after him, where he destroys all the rubble that was left by Starscream, Skywarp, and Nova Storm, escaping the Ghost Facility, and has Megatron promise him that if he brings Starscream back, he won't, like, brutally maim him on the way back, which Megatron begrudgingly agrees to. And I love that you can tell that Megatron doesn't want to agree to Optimus, that he actually wants to, like, maim Starscream in that. And it's just so interesting how EarthSpark Megatron, well, he's such a good guy, Starscream seems to be such a triggering figure for him that he can't seem to forgive Starscream or just not take it easy with him. He's just, like, such a vile person to him in that regard. And I really hope we see in season 2 maybe a flashback episode or something explaining just what the history between EarthSpark, Megatron, and Starscream is. That, of course, leads to what our next scene is, which is after the Dweller gets Skywarp and Nova Storm, Robbie and Mo realize that some large figure is approaching # and Starscream, but then, while they think at first it's the Dweller, Robbie really recorrects himself by saying that it's not the Dweller, but something else entirely. And it turns out it's, of course, none other than Megatron, who doesn't even give Starscream a chance to explain himself. He just straight up shoots Starscream in the chest with his fusion cannon, and then starts battling him, trying to stop him. And, oh my god, there's one thing about the scene that's a big point of contention for many EarthSpark fans, and that is this one bit with Megatron versus Starscream. So there's 2 points throughout the scene where we see, for a split second when Megatron's attacking Starscream, Megatron doesn't have his usual Ghost Decepticon badge on his chest. Instead, he has the original Decepticon badge that he had when he was still leading the Decepticons. Some people believe that this is actually an animation error and that EarthSpark's animation team just got the models mixed up. But then some other people also believe that this was intentional, that because he's only seen with the Decepticon badge when he's being brutal towards Starscream, when he shoots him here with the fusion cannon, and then again when he grabs him by the face and slams him down, which honestly into the ground is really cool because it's also like a sort of a almost shot-for-shot recreation of when Megatron nearly beats Starscream to death in the IW comics in Spotlight Megatron, which, funny enough, was written and drawn by Nick Roche, who both created Starscream and Megatron's EarthSpark designs here. The way even Megatron grabs Starscream's face and slams him down, it's literally how he did the same thing to him in the IDW comics, but just in reverse. He slams the his whole face into the floor to the point where literally he breaks his nose, he knocks a few of his teeth out, and it's brutal. But of course we can't have that in EarthSpark, so he just grabs him and slams the back of his head in to the point where he's like just stuns him. It's not as brutal, of course, as it was in the IW comics, because I mean, who wants to literally see Megatron beat Starscream to death? I mean, unless this is Cyberverse we're talking about, where they actually did do that, but not to the degree of Starscream breaking his nose and losing some teeth, but god. Anyway, though, Megatron clearly puts the hurt on Starscream, and I love also how Starscream fights back against Megatron here, where we actually get to see he shifts his arm at one point into a saw blade, very similar to Transformers Prime Knockout, and it's so cool to see characters get saw blades as like hand weapons, so it's cool to see Starscream and EarthSpark has that. But anyway, despite Starscream's efforts to try and fight back against Megatron, Megatron is just way too strong for him and overpowers and knocks him to the ground. And he points his fusion cannon right at Starscream. Looks like he's getting ready to kill him. He's even charging it up. And then all of a sudden, just as Starscream like is cowering in fear, trying to protect himself from Megatron, Hashtag all of a sudden jumps in front of Starscream, screaming at Megatron not to kill him and that he's not like a bad guy here and that they gotta focus on the Dweller instead. And Megatron is at first just not seeming to take the threat of the Dweller all seriously, saying that it's just a myth like Starscream did earlier in this episode, until of course said Dweller comes back and wraps a tentacle around Megatron's face, trying to drain his energon. And we see it's cool in the way that Megatron's face gets this weird like cybernetic like scar across it where it looks like veins or like a USB like circuit board is on his face. And I thought this was going to be a permanent scar he gets, considering he has this for the remainder of the episode, but he just loses it the next time we see him in a future episode. So I guess it's just a temporary thing. But man, it would have been so cool if Megatron got like a face scar from the Dweller trying to suck out his energon here, because he already has a scar on his chest from when Mandro nearly cut his hand off, or his arm off, in the first batch of episodes. But regardless, as the Dweller is draining Megatron, Hashtag slams into the Dweller to try and free him. And while that works, the Dweller ends up pulling Hashtag into another door. And it's not Megatron who saves Hashtag here, but it's Starscream. Starscream literally gets up and throws himself towards the Dweller to try and pull Hashtag back out of the door, but ends up getting pulled in instead. And that's just, again, how far, or how much, an example of how much Hashtag has changed Starscream to actually make him a selfless character for once. It's very similar to how IEW 1 Starscream acted, where, he was someone who was very tortured by his incarnation of Megatron, to the point where he was very selfish and always concerned about himself, because he was just so afraid of Megatron coming back to hurt him one day, just when he thought he had everything he wanted. In the IW comics, though, it was Windblade who got Starscream to kind of open up and actually become more of a selfless person by the end of the comics. So to see now Hashtag take Windblade's place in EarthSpark and convince Starscream to turn over a new leaf, I love that he's finally become such a selfless character, at least a Hashtag. It's so cool to see as a big Starscream fan. After Hashtag and Starscream both end up getting grabbed by this Dweller, that brings us to the climax of this episode, which absolutely has one of the best moments of this episode in my opinion. So we see the Dweller carry Starscream and Hashtag into this big, open, large cave, where we see actually Skywarp and Novastorm frozen partially inside of these big red crystals, where some parts of them are sticking out like their arms, legs, and bits of their head. And so it seems as though that the same fate is going to befall Starscream as well, who is set aside by the Dweller when it seems to be focused more on Hashtag, prepared to either eat her or most likely put her into one of the same crystals that it put Skywarp and Novastorm in. However, just when it's about to go ahead and do that to Hashtag, Starscream all of a sudden just starts shouting at the Dweller and trying to get its attention to attack him instead of Hashtag. And it's so great to see. It's so great to see now it's unlike anything we've seen any other Starscream do before. Prime Starscream would never do this. Cyberverse Starscream would never do this. The only other Starscreams I could think of that would do this would be either Armada Starscream or IW 1 Starscream. The fact that we've gotten to have Starscream have such a character arc in this 20-minute episode of going from such a selfish, damaged character to someone who's presumably on the road to healing thanks to Hashtag is so cool. And there's also this really cool video made by my friend Comet and Cam, who you might have seen, has put together this really awesome half-hour video essay on EarthSpark Starscream and how he shows symptoms of PTSD and how he grows as a character. I'm gonna go ahead and leave a link to that in the card to this video, plus in the description, because it was a big inspiration to me, just talking about this and stuff like his original conversation with Hashtag in the map room, how he portrays Megatron, how it might be a hallucination that he saw a Decepticon symbol on him and not just an animation error. But it's just, Comet and Cam's video was so good and was a big part of inspiring me to write some stuff for my review of this episode. But anyway, Starscream, of course, leads the Dweller over to him instead, trying to save Hashtag. And he does this by noticing a large cluster of crystals right above the Dweller. So he ends up shooting the crystals with his null ray. That causes them to come down onto the ground and causes the whole floor of the cave to collapse. And the Dweller partially falls into it, but not completely. But it's Hashtag actually who ends up falling completely down into the cavern. But it turns out that's actually where all the cave water went that we saw disappear through the floor at the start of this episode. The cave water somehow ended up being sucked all the way down into this big ravine, and Hashtag falls into it, going deeper and deeper into the water like she's at the start of a Kingdom Hearts game. But as Hashtag is submerged inside this giant pool of cave water, at the same time basically gives her a huge power boost. So she comes out like with her eyes fully charged and even her visor is glowing to show off like how much strength the cave water has given her. And so just as the Dweller is about to get ready to kill Starscream, Hashtag does what I believe is such like the most incredible feat of strength that any character does in the entirety of EarthSpark. She grabs the Dweller by the tail, a creature that's nearly like 3 to 5 times her size, and drags it all the way by herself into the pool of cave water, causing the whole Dweller to melt within the water and kills it, saving Starscream in the process. It is absolutely incredible that the cave water gives Hashtag such super strength, but it's such a cool picture to see Hashtag goes out of her way to save Starscream by killing the Dweller, just as Starscream did by sacrificing himself to make sure Hashtag could get away, while also trying to save her earlier from after she tried to save Megatron before. It's so good, and I love Hashtag and Starscream's relationship. I really hope we get to see them interact more again in Season 2. Once Hashtag kills the Dweller, she and Starscream free Skywarp and Nova Storm from the crystals, while at the same time radioing Robbie, Mo, and everyone else that the Dweller's dead and that's safe because she found the cave water now. So they all run over to where Starscream and Hashtag are, trying to use the cave water. They all stand in like a big circle, very similarly to how they activated the big force field at the end of episode 18. In an attempt to hope that it cures Robbie of his cybersleeve illness while also fixing cybersleeve in the process. But nothing happens. Absolutely nothing changes, and while all the other Terrans are refueled by the cave water, it doesn't do anything to make Robbie feel less sick or even fix his cybersleeve. Though Hashtag, while she's still clearly hurt by this fact that all this effort that they've done was seemingly for nothing, she does try to reassure Robbie and Mo that this is just some rough patch and they'll figure it out together as a family, which I really do like. But it does tie in a bit into what's going to happen in the next episode, which I'm really excited to talk about later. Anyway, though, the episode then ends where all the Terrans and Seekers are outside of the cave, with Megatron even, and we get this really cool brief conversation with Megatron and Starscream. They kind of have a goodbye of sorts. So it starts off with Starscream shouting at Megatron that he doesn't want to go back into prison and being taken there by Megatron, and instead Megatron actually is like soft-spoken towards him for once. He's not actually hateful to him. He doesn't try to immediately kill him like he did in the cave. He just softly asks him, what if you could go somewhere safe? And it's such a powerful response Starscream gives to it here that I'm just going to go ahead and play this whole scene right here.
I won't let you put me back in a cage.
What if you could go somewhere safe?
Nowhere is safe if it's with you.
The utter vitriol in Starscream's voice as he says nowhere is safe as long as it's with you. Oh, it's just so good to see like that, even after Megatron is clearly trying to make amends for how he treated Starscream in the cave, and probably to a lesser extent all the abuse he gave him back during the war. The fact that Starscream still hasn't forgiven Megatron for that, I think that's actually, in a weird way, an empowering message to people who may have been abused by others in their lives in the past, that it's totally okay to not forgive people that abused you. While yes, they could change and they could say that they regret everything they've done, you're not obligated to forgive them for that. You're not a bad person if you don't forgive someone for that. And I'm sure that's what's happening here, that Starscream, he's clearly traumatized by what's Megatron's done to him, as we can see from all the reactions he had, even presumably hallucinating, the Decepticon symbol back on Megatron when he was attacking Starscream. So the fact that Starscream is so against being with Megatron, it's a really empowering moment for Starscream and just people in general who may have been victims of abuse watching this show. It's really cool. But anyway, Starscream rejects Megatron's plan to basically be taken somewhere safe, and instead decides to run away with Skywarp and Nova Storm, where she teleports in to grab Nova Storm and Starscream. But just before they leave, Starscream actually calls out to Hashtag to basically reminding her to take care of herself. And I just love that. The little smile he gives to Hashtag and the one she gives to him back right before he, Skywarp and Novastorm all teleport away. It's so cute to see that Starscream actually has, like, a fondness towards Hashtag. That he really sees her as this daughter figure that really helped him grow as a person. And I really, really hope, Nickelodeon, that we get to see them interact more in Season 2. Please. Because they were just so good together. After that, though, the episode then ends on a very somber note with Robbie and Mo talking outside the ranger station. We saw the way back in episode 20 of Mo feeling bad for Robbie that the cave water didn't work, but again, just like Hashtag did earlier, tries to reassure him that they'll find a way to save him. However, Robbie then ends the episode with a shocking, very shocking reveal saying that he doesn't want Mo to get his hopes up and thinks he might actually be dying soon, because he pulls open the collar of his shirt to reveal several dark veins across his neck and chest, revealing that the cyber sleeve illness is only getting worse. And that's going to tie in to the finale of the cyber sickness arc, which will be with episode 22 next week. And it's a very somber ending to this episode. It's kind of more so just a way to set up the next episode, but also just really down, like, a kind of a downer ending after the almost hopeful one we got with Starscream and Hashtag sort of having a very good, sweet goodbye together, and Starscream seeming to be a better person as a result of it. But it's a powerful one still, that the whole mission, that the reason why all the Terrans went here to try and cure Robbie, it was all for nothing. Sure, Hashtag may have gone through to Starscream and made him a better person, but Robbie's still dying, and will the Terrans and Maltas be able to save him? We'll have to find out in the next episode. And so, that was my review of Transformers EarthSpark Season 1, Episode 21, What Dwells Within. I don't think it's any surprise to say that I'm going to give this episode another 100 out of 10, 10 out of 10, just like I did with episode 14, Security Protocols. These two episodes are without a doubt peak EarthSpark. The way they not only tell a great story with the Terrans and Maltos, but at the same time weave in legacy characters in such an interesting way. It's so, so good. It easily gives, in my opinion, the best version of Starscream across the entire Transformers franchise, bar Prime Starscream. No, actually, no. EarthSpark Starscream is way better than Prime Starscream. He's only had one episode to show himself off completely. The fact that EarthSpark Starscream has so much more character than Prime Starscream, and development than Prime Starscream, I should say, is astounding. And kudos to May Cat and the rest of the EarthSpark development team for creating such an interesting and unique version of this character that we haven't seen since the IDW comics. Kudos to you all for creating what is arguably the best version of Starscream across the entire franchise. And the way his relationship with Hashtag and Megatron is so cool. It's just such an empowering, amazing episode of EarthSpark. But that's going to be it for this very long review. Thank you all so much for watching. I'll be back next week with the finale of the Cyber Sickness arc with episode 22 Primetime. If you like this review, be sure to like, comment, and of course subscribe, and I will see you guys later.